Anna Garrett from the Secretariat of Supercycle Highways.
Or the Office of the Cycle Superhighway.
Office of Sub. Yes.
Should I put on a microphone?
Yes, please.
My name is Anna Garrett, and I'm very happy to be here in real life because I've been missing seeing people, and usually my job actually included doing a lot of presentations, but it's been ages and it's been online until now, so I'm very happy to get the option to show up in person. But I'm here as the planner of the long-distance cycling infrastructure, and I work at a place we call the Office for Cycle Superhighways, and I'll explain to you what that construction actually is, because it's a little bit unique for Denmark. You can just go on. But just as an introduction, I work in the capital region of Denmark, as you can see on the map. Right in the middle, that's where Copenhagen is. And in this part of Denmark, we have a total network of above 800 kilometers of planned cycle superhighways. Today, we have almost 200 kilometers implemented, but it's an ongoing process to build the cycle superhighways. So that's where we are today. And we're a collaboration of 29 municipalities and one region. There's 5 regions in Denmark. We work in one region. And the history goes back a little bit more than 10 years because the city of Copenhagen could see that they couldn't reach their goals to get enough people to cycle in the city, and they still had a lot of car traffic in the city. But this car traffic mainly came from the outskirts of the city. So they had to make a collaboration with the surrounding municipalities to create really good cycling infrastructure coming into the city, so you could have more people ride bike trips above 5 kilometers, more those long distance cycle routes. So this was a strategy to actually get car traffic out of Copenhagen. So this is the story today. You can see how many kilometers have been built over the years, how many we have today, and how many we plan to have when our plan as it is now is finished far away in the future. And so the vision is that we want cycling infrastructure to be like this. That you see an image or a name of a type of infrastructure, and then you know exactly what to predict. So you know when you get on it, you know that you will reach your destination and it's not suddenly going to stop. You can take the next slide. Because today this is more like what you experience when you go on your bike and you cross a municipality border. Suddenly the cycle track can stop. You'll end up in a bus lane, or you simply can't move on because of construction work. The bike has been around for a very long time, so we're trying to get where the motor highways are today. That's the vision. And therefore, we also have this logo, which is the orange C, which stands for Cycle Superhighway. And it's supposed to be recognizable in the same way as the highway sign, the metro sign, the S-train sign, to offer an alternative. That's it. So who uses them? And to me, this is a very interesting part, because usually cycling is something that we say people can do in urban areas up to 5 kilometers. But we have experienced that there's a very big potential for people wanting to cycle longer distances. And these are the users that we're planning for. It can be people in the city center. It could also be the guys in the Lycra or the person on the e-bike. Usually I've realized that how you notice the long distance commuters is that they are wearing a backpack because they need to change at work. So there is a difference between the sports mammals and the commuter long distance cyclists. Yeah. And what we've seen is, because we do a lot of surveys and evaluations of everything we do, so we've spoken to above 7,000 people cycling on our network. And what we know is that the average trip length is 11 kilometers, and that's one trip going from home to work, and not both in one day. So it's a very long distance. And even on some routes, you can see that it's almost 15 kilometers is the average trip length. And it's the majority are commuters that we're talking to. No, just stay. And this is really interesting because if you look at the average trip length on the S-train network is 12 kilometers. If you look into the statistic data on how far people have to their workplace from their home, you can see that in our region, the capital region, 55% has 10 kilometers or less to their workplace. So it's just a way to state that there's a big potential if we can make it possible for people to ride longer distances, because you need to make it possible with the infrastructure or with the type of bicycle or that you actually that it's possible to do from where you're coming from and going to. And why are people willing to cycle 11 kilometers to work? Because usually in the transport planning, we're thinking that everyone are time efficient and you're going to pick the fastest route. And if it's the car that's the fastest, then you're going to do that. And a lot of people do that. But for the people we're talking to using the cycle highways, there's also a different aspect of what is the fastest. And that is that in your overall planning, then maybe it's okay to spend 10 minutes more cycling to work if it means that you don't have to go to the gym and you get some alone time and you get some physical activity that can fit in your schedule from Monday to Friday, which also includes packing lunch, taking your kids to school, going grocery shopping, all these things. That's what we hear from people, that in the overall planning, it is time efficient for them to do that. Yeah, and overall, when we've implemented the cycle superhighways, we've seen an increase in 23% of cyclists along the network. Yeah, and when we talk to those new cyclists, we can see that 14% said that they used to drive a car before they did that. Of course, it's some good numbers. It's always nice to show that you can move people away from car traffic. But the capital region had a survey made some years back saying that if everyone that's already cycling in the region now, they didn't cycle, then we would have a 30% increase in car traffic. So it's just to say that everything counts. Okay, and yeah, you can change. Okay, so just it needs a little bit of explanation how we sort of are organized and how we work. And I always find this super interesting because as a planner, you realize that the results you're creating depends on how you're organized. It has a huge impact. But we are a collaboration of 30 municipalities. We just turned to 30, that's why it says 29 on the other slide. And the reason is that in Denmark, the municipalities are the planning authority of all cycling infrastructure. In other countries, it would be also the region that's in charge of regional infrastructure, but in Denmark, the regions are in charge of hospitals. They're not in charge of infrastructure. So we have the national government who's in charge of all the state roads and the highways, and then the municipalities are in charge of all the cycling infrastructure. And that can be a challenge if you have 30 small municipalities in a huge metropolitan area of Denmark, because all these people need to coordinate. Some of them are 2 kilometers wide. So you can imagine if you need to build a cycle route that's 30 kilometers long, it creates a lot of coordination between all those municipalities. So that's where I work. I work for the Office for Cycle Superhighways. We're 7 people-ish. So we're the little orange thing in the bottom. And what we do is that we help all these people who are sitting in each municipalities. It might be one person, it might be 2 people who are working in the mobility department doing everything like climate adaptation, bus transport, everything. So of course, cycling can end up rather low on their priority list, and even like regional cycling going to the other municipalities is not a very high priority. So it's been necessary to create this collaboration where we can assist the municipalities to create one common plan for where the route's going to be, and gather everyone and have them pick out, okay, what's going to happen in the next couple of years? Can we agree on something? Because all these municipalities are like small kingdoms with their own political direction and will and visions. And it can be a little bit like the Game of Thrones. You don't think that one small municipality can be like that, have that conscious about themselves, but they do. We just have less blood and sex. Yeah, you can change. Okay, so what is an actual cycle highway? How do we build it? We have 4 quality measures, which are pretty common in cycle planning, that of course we want it to be accessible next to train stations where people live, where people work. They need to be rather direct, of course. You need to have a high sense of comfort, and they of course need to be safe and secure. And in Denmark, we have a long history of cycle planning. So of course, we already have a lot of old infrastructure that is still there, but maybe it ends at the end of the municipalities, and then there's a new bit, and they all look different. So it's the task has been to create a network of where it makes sense, where people are coming from and going to, and then we're upgrading existing infrastructure and implementing new one where there isn't any. And it can be all types of solutions that we're working on. It can be a completely new track. It can be to widen it. It can be to just put on some new surface. It can be to create a platform next to the bus stop so the bus passengers don't walk straight into the cyclists or the other way around. And then it can also, of course, be ITS solutions, lighting, or all these extra nice things that Marianne was just talking about that makes you feel prioritized as a cyclist, that you're being counted, you get information about what the temperature is, or you can rest your foot on the footrest. Yeah. And this is in Denmark. We've called them cycle superhighways, but these are happening all over the world right now, being planned. They go by many names: Snelfietsroutes in the Netherlands, or Radschnellweg in Germany, or cycle highways is like the most common international terms for these routes. And just to give a few examples, we have our name after London because they were sort of the first ones to create this concept, which is just a regional cycle tracks. But there's also a lot happening in the Netherlands, of course. Belgium is very far ahead. And then during Corona, it's just exploded. Berlin is also moving very fast. Yeah. And then I thought I'd bring this one because I'm at a university and the IET is supposed to create new knowledge and everything. So in 3 minutes, I'm going to be very fast to say what knowledge that I think is needed, and also my colleagues in the other countries also miss. And one main topic before you change the slide is just climate and cycling. And e-bikes, like what role can cycling play in the whole climate adaptation? I feel like we're always talking about electric cars, although in Denmark we have so many more e-bikes than we have electric cars, but nobody's talking about it. And I'd like a lot more research on that topic. But what we also find is that there's a lot of very fundamental things that are missing in order for us to create better knowledge on cycling. So one thing is that we're needing basic data about where is the infrastructure today. For instance, the city of Oslo made a research showing that, made a study showing that 75% of all people use Google Maps to find their way in Oslo. And the unfortunate thing is that the data about where all the infrastructure is completely wrong. And nobody's really looking into this because maybe it's too basic, but it's kind of the basis of everything else we do. The next thing is, of course, our traffic models, which are also building upon that. It's very difficult to predict bicycle traffic, and we've known for years other countries are talking about the same things. It's very difficult to model cycle traffic, and that's also why we started talking about the EIT project in the first place. I feel especially the longer cycle trips that the models know that it can happen, and it's not above 5 kilometers, then people move over to the cars. And then building on top of that is, of course, the cost-benefit analysis, the socio-economic impacts of, is this investment a good investment? Because this is something we do all over the world. When we build a new highway, we look into, is it worth investing money in it? Will we get the money back in some way? And just doing that calculation in Denmark is also very difficult because we cannot rely on all the other data. And also in Denmark, for instance, we don't even know how much we've invested in cycling infrastructure in Denmark. We don't have an overview of that anywhere. Measuring the impact of what we do. And then the last one, people behavior, also need more knowledge about that. I think there's one more. Monitoring, okay, one more. Okay, and then this is gonna be my last slide, just saying that, of course, we need to be better at evaluating, monitoring, but then also when there is actually some data and knowledge, we need to make it available in an easier way, so it's more accessible for people and it's easier to understand. So this, for instance, is just an example of the National Transport Survey in Denmark in a nice paper form. And then the other example is the National Transport Survey in Sweden, where it's a very nice, like, interactive web page where you can just generate all the data and get a very nice overview. So yeah, thank you for that. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Anna. We have one question on Slido. You mentioned the backpack because cyclists change at work. Are workplaces ready for this? Showers, changing rooms.
Yeah.
Is there any program to encourage that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we also work with companies, of course, because with long distance cycling, you kind of need to acknowledge that your trip already starts at home and it also ends when you reach your workplace, because you need to plan beforehand and dress up for it, and you need to shower at work. And of course, there's a lot of workplaces that do have showers, especially in Denmark, because a lot of people are cycling, but there are also workplaces that aren't. So that's something you should work on in every country, both to encourage the companies to implement the facilities that are necessary. I think in the future, or even now, it will also be charging stations for your e-bikes and proper bicycle parking for if you have a more expensive bike or your e-bike and so on. So that's something that needs to be encouraged, and you can do a lot to help the companies, but in the end, they need to do it themselves.
Great, thank you. I just have one brief question, I hope. So clearly, it seems like the local politicians are interested in this. You have many municipalities part of your work. How about the higher level politicians? Are they interested, and how do we attract their attention?
I mean, the last minister was not that interested, but now we have a transport minister who calls himself #CycleMinister. So that's a start.
Yes.
I think the good thing for us is that it's kind of a winner project in a way. Like, you cannot not like improving cycling. I think what's difficult is that you then prioritize it over something else, that we actually see the result in that more money are being invested in the end, that we get some more national funding for cycling, for instance, and we haven't seen a lot of that yet. No. So I hope it's going to change, but it's ongoing, and it's the same thing with the local politicians, that is always prioritizing. So maybe it's easy to say that you support it, but yeah.
Great. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.